Good morning. Devin here with Ground Force Metal Detecting, and this is Metal Detecting Coffee Talk. I want to make a video here and talk about my top tips for semi-beginning metal detectorists. Maybe you've had a metal detector for, under a year, maybe about a year. I'm not, I don't have the audacity to sit here and advise someone of 30 years experience with these things that I'm going to talk about here. But hey, if that's you, maybe you'll hear something that you needed to hear. Nobody knows it all, right? The number one thing, and these are tips to help you if you're just not finding the things that you see other people finding. All right. Now, number one thing is location. Okay, the stuff has to be there. You're not going to find anything, of course, that's not in the ground. And what makes a location good? Um, Activity, human activity, right? Human activity on the ground, denser human activity. The more people that hung out and traversed that area that you're metal detecting, the better. The more stuff they dropped, right, or lost. Um, you can find these places. The probably the best place to metal detect for old coins and relics and stuff are old houses that have been there since the period you're trying to find stuff from, right? So old houses, in the United States, we're talking 1800s houses. If you're lucky, 1700s houses. Um, but also, here's the important thing. Um, you don't want one that's been all redone on the outside or has an addition. I mean, that's fine if the yard's big enough, if it's a big enough area. But whenever somebody puts an addition on a house, they dig and they spread all that out, and you've got 6 inches of dirt from way below any human artifacts spread out all over the ground, and it buries a lot of the stuff, makes it twice as deep. Anyway, it's not a deal killer, but um, a lot of the stuff that you'll find at these old houses are probably in the vicinity of the house, where the most people had traffic lanes. All right, you'll find stuff a lot of times, around the entrance and exit ways, and along the path that they took to get to their mode of transportation, or if there's a water source, if it's that old, um, that's a good place to look. Clotheslines are a good place to look where the old clotheslines were. There's just a lot of places around. If they had an outhouse, man, that's the path to the outhouse is great. Remember, people were throwing their pants on to go out there and you know having stuff all jostled around and loosened up in their pockets, and sometimes stuff falls out, right? Um, like money. That's probably the best place. If you're doing a park, okay, which I do a lot of parks, I like to look at aerial photos, historic aerial photos, and there's a website I use called historicaerials.com. All right, and I use that to compare today's aerial photo to one usually from 1950s or thereabouts, just because that's usually one of the oldest ones. And I go through and I pick one that's, you know, not legible, but clearer, a little bit better clarity. And there's certain years were clearer than others. So I'll take a look and see if that park was there in, say, the 1950s. And if it wasn't, see what it was. If it was just farmland, Eh, usually you're not going to find a lot of old stuff. I mean, you still will, but remember, in a park, you kind of got to get through a lot of garbage, okay? And parks, you know, I mainly look in parks for jewelry and shallower finds. Um, Certain parks that I go to are not as bad with junk, and I can find some old stuff, find old coins. I have a couple parks where I find a lot of old coins, baseball fields, old baseball fields. Around the outside of old baseball fields where like the parents would watch or the spectators would watch, and even in the baseball field, if you can get this kind of permission, all right. Back in the day, they didn't have separate fairgrounds and carnival grounds. Usually, somebody like the fire company or a church owned the baseball field land, or the county, and or the state or whatever, right? What have you? The locality owned the baseball field, and they would hold their fairs and carnivals on the baseball field. Okay, they still do it today here where I live. But if you can find one that had old carnivals and fairgrounds on it back in the day, and you can get permission there, I have one, and it's spectacular. Okay, I find a lot of old stuff right in the baseball field. Now, that brings me to my second most important, well, that brings me to another important point, okay? Learn and take pride in your digging. Um, your technique of making a plug should be such that you cut almost like pretend you're at a golf course and you're cutting out the sod that you're planned to put back. Okay, I take a serrated digger, and now I usually use 90% of where I go. I use a small digger. You can use a big shovel for this too, but cut out your sod in they say a U, but it's a more like a circle, but with a little piece attached. And I stick in and I pry up, stick in and pry up, stick in and pry up, stick in and pry up. And what I'll do, and you can see this in my metal detecting videos, I'll flip it over, and I even use a small rag or towel, and I'll lay it down, and I dig around in the hole, get my extra dirt out of there. I pile it on the rag. I mean, I take pride that I drag it back. When I'm done, I find my target. I drag the rag over and flip the dirt back in the hole, and I take pride that when I flip that plug back over and I stomp it down a little bit and brush the grass a little bit, sometimes even I can't tell where it was, okay? But my goal is that when I walk away from that hole, no one can tell that I was there, okay? That's important, okay? It's going to help you with your permissions, keep you from getting told not to come back, whatever, right? Um, Technique, right? Metal detecting technique in itself. Your coil swing, okay? Your coil needs to be level throughout your swing, okay? Left to right, and it should be a wide swing. Your coil should come 180 degrees to your left side, and the whole way 180 degrees to your right side. So you should have an entire semicircle that you're swinging, and the coil needs to be level throughout that swing, not letting your arm swing it up on the sides. Like, you don't want one of these, okay? If you ever see somebody metal detecting, I see people like this even at the beach, right? And they're swinging like this, right? You're only getting within any detectoring range in that center section where your coil's close and touching and parallel to the ground. You want your coil flat and level, parallel to the ground, throughout your swing. And your swing speed, okay? Low and slow is the saying. Now, depends on your detector too, how fast it processes, okay? XP Deus 2, a Manicore, they process extremely fast. You can swing a little bit faster. But in general, the rule of thumb is about 3 to 3.5 seconds from right to left, back to right. So it's 1001, 1002, 1003. That should be the speed of your entire swing. And you know, if you're somewhere where you're going for deeper stuff, slow it down a little bit and lower your recovery speed. Um, that's I'm not going to get into actual settings on metal detectors here. This is high level tips. Okay, these are tips, not about how to set up your metal detector specifically. The way you need to have your metal detector set up, and you need to learn to set it up, is to be stable. Okay, that is the most important aspect of your setup. Is your metal detector should be stable. It should not be chattering. It should not be picking up a bunch of false targets. Okay, you want a nice quiet metal detector until you hit a target. That's an art in itself, just setting up your metal detector, and that's for another video. And I've already made those videos. So look up how to set up your metal detector, your particular metal detector. Okay, whatever metal detector you have, there are YouTube videos out there on how to set up that metal detector, and that's what you should use. And you want to go for stability. Don't go for maximum depth, although stability is going to help you with that. But you really want to go with a stable machine. Okay, nobody, not only nobody wants to hear all that chatter, but every time that metal detector chatters, it's processing what it thinks is a target. Okay, every one of those chatters is not just random noise. That's the metal detector processing a target that's not there. All right, you're using up your processing um, power. Okay, you're using up your processing speed. You're using up the processor's memory, and it's just you want the metal detector nice and stable. Okay. Um, Learn how to, while I'm on detecting technique, learn how to pinpoint using your coil, not with the pinpoint feature on your metal detector, but learn how to pinpoint with just the coil. Okay. What I mean by that is sometimes called the wobble method. I have a specific video that talks about how to do it. But basically, you find a target and you wobble your coil back and forth in the smallest increment possible, getting that repeat beep and stable reading on the metal detector on a particular target. And then once you have it nailed down that you found your target, back up the coil slowly until you lose that target. And when that coil drops off the back of the target, guess what? The target's directly in front of the center of your coil. And you can do this so much faster and more accurately, because what you do is you do that, find your target, then rotate, keep your eye where the spot was, or your foot or something. I use my toe all the time. You see it in my videos. But rotate 90 degrees and do it again real quick, just to verify. And if you rotate 90 degrees and you can't pinpoint the target, it's probably was a false target. Probably was falsing you with a nail or something like that. You should be able to pinpoint your target two ways. Even if you only turn 30 degrees, just turn two ways when you pinpoint with your coil. Just do. It only takes a second. It takes less time than switching to pinpoint mode and then switching back. So pinpoint with your coil. Let's see. So stable metal detector, pinpoint with your coil. I talked about location. Let's talk about sound. All right. If you have a mid to high level metal detector with different audio profiles, one of the most important things that you have to learn is a lot of the metal detecting happens in your ear. Okay. Um, a lot of the metal detecting happens by ear. You will learn to hear differences and nuances in the target, and in the beeps of your metal detector. The length of the beep, the intensity of the beep, the sound of the beep itself, the sharpness, the volume. You'll learn by default, just with time, you'll learn what they mean. But the important thing to this is consistency with your audio on your metal detector. Some metal detectors have 5, 6, 10 different audio profiles, more. Pick your favorite, okay? Pick your favorite way to metal detect. Maybe you like all tones, where every tone throughout the VDI scale is a different pitch. Maybe you like that. Maybe you like one tone. If that's you, I don't know, you're kind of weird. But if no, I'm just kidding. But maybe you like 5-tone, maybe you like 3-tone, whatever you like. Pick one and make that your sound. Okay, pick one and make it your sound. That's what you use all the time, and your brain will be used to it and learn so much faster than if you're jumping around with different. Hey, today I'm going to try this audio. Tomorrow I'm going to try this audio. I mean, do that until you find your favorite. But once you find your favorite audio profile, not all metal detectors have all these profiles. Okay, maybe you don't have all these choices. If you don't, you're automatically in consistency by default. But so don't worry about it. But be consistent with your settings as far as audio. It's really important. Consistency and persistency. Don't give up. This is not something you're going to master on day one. Okay, and you don't have to. I think those are my top tips. Okay, and don't get too hung up on obscure settings in your detector. Learn them and use them as tools. Don't get too crazy about custom programs. Don't get too crazy about me. I advocate using a custom program as a learning tool. If your metal detector has custom programs out there, I advocate using them as learning tools. But you should graduate from that at some point to where you are customizing your metal detector for whatever you're doing that day. A custom program isn't really custom if you think about it. It's a cookie cutter program that worked for that person that day on that land, and may not be the right program for what you're doing. Maybe it works one day and doesn't work another, and you're wondering why. Well, because you're using the exact same settings all the time. When I say don't go crazy, you do need to learn those settings, but it's not something you need to do right away. But eventually you'll want to learn them. Well, that's it right now for this video. Just wanted to see if I can give somebody some help. Appreciate you watching. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Swing away.